Hello, everyone. This is a video version of our monthly What Are They Up To piece. We tend to send it out in hard copy, and that's a good means of distribution, but also I think putting some context orally around some of the themes and trends in which we're seeing on a periodic basis. Again, this will be a monthly piece in which we send out. So What Are They Up To is our focus is to highlight two companies in which we own and some of the reasons why we own it. But most importantly, what are they doing on the product side and at the business level that we think are interesting and something worth sharing with you at home. So look out for these on a monthly basis. Again, it'll be the hard copy along with a video version so you can kind of consume it any way you want. What Are They Up To has a new look and feel for October of 2020. What essentially our main focus as it relates to this piece is fairly simple. It's what are the long-term drivers of these businesses? In our view, most people tend to focus on things like stock price, and that is a reflection of the eventual success of a business. But in the meantime, and I mean month to month, what we're really focused on are things like management team, product, go-to-market, the growth engine, the business model, how they're sourcing different products. And that's obviously pretty important in this environment. Any disruption risk on the horizon, and how durable is this moat that they continue to create. The two companies in focus this month will be Omnicell, and then second will be Nutanix. So Omnicell at a high level focuses on the healthcare automation space. So think of medication management. Their whole motto and mission today, and again, they're around 20, 25 years old, same founder from day one. Focus is really to automate the pharmacy. So everything from pick to pack to distribution, inventory management, the entire kind of flow of process, looking to automate that. So it's a big trend for us in terms of you'll see some stuff come out of us in the next several months as we update our big thematic ideas. One of them will be something along these lines, or two of them will be something along these lines. And Omnicell fits right in that equation. So we have this nice tailwind behind us as investors. The company has nice tailwinds as a business. And again, that means a lot in our view. The mode is switching cost. This is a hardware plus software business. And if you go to many hospitals and health facilities across the country and across the globe, you'll basically likely run into an Omnicell solution on the hardware side. They're in about 150 or so of the top 300 hospitals and systems I'm referring to. And the equipment that's inside of these hospitals and the sheer platform that they're building out from a hardware to software, we think that's durable as it relates to building out a switching cost for this business. There's all the different components of why we like it below that. I'll skip to Nutanix real quick before we get into some of the details. And the main theme there is also automation. And it's really automation and the simplification of infrastructure, right? Everything we do, including everything I'm running on right now, technology-wise, there's some sort of hardware that's managing it, right? There's, whether it's your physical computer inside your office, whether you have a physical data center on your premise, or you're using something like Amazon or Google or Microsoft in terms of their infrastructure resources. So keep in mind, when we talk about infrastructure, this is really hardware. I mean, Amazon has football fields worth of servers in which essentially a lot of the applications and technology we all use is running on this hardware, and it's manufactured and procured kind of in places we don't see, right? So it's essentially making infrastructure invisible. Nutanix fits with that premise and is looking to automate some of the on-premise infrastructure, and they've also changed some of their go-to-market messaging, meaning they used to go along the lines of hyper-converged infrastructure, so HCI. Now they changed the HCI to a hybrid cloud infrastructure. And again, we think this is an important part of the transformation taking place within technology. Again, switching costs, I'll elaborate more on that later on. But at a high level, because this is the first one, what I want to highlight is the very first page is essentially the summary of the two companies in which will be in focus for that given month. Now let's focus a little bit more on Omnicell, and I'll enlarge that a little bit. But basically, again, on the top, basically you see 50% of the top 300 health systems are Omnicell customers. They fill a $58 billion market size. And this addressable market is really across multiple lines of business for them. If you look at the sheer problem that they're looking to solve, since 1970, the amount of hospital administrative staff has increased by about 3,000%. And 75% of the work being done inside a pharmacy is non-clinical in nature. So if you just think about that, and we think about the cost of health and all the different things that are, again, increasing the overall cost to healthcare, this is one in which can help boost outcomes and also lower costs. So we think that equation makes a lot of sense, and it's also an investment we want to be behind. The current moat, so if you look on the right, we define some of the moats here. And maybe at a high level for this one, I'll articulate a little bit about what I mean by that. So when we are looking at the various moats that are out there, some of them are network effects, meaning the network gets stronger as you add more nodes to a network. This tends to happen in much more digital-only businesses. And in some cases, it can be physical and digital. But in general, you'll see things like Facebook and Visa and MasterCard and some of these large networks of people or nodes. As they get bigger, the more powerful that network becomes. Switching costs, again, just meaning much harder to switch from one solution to the other. Omnicell does fit that category. And again, I spoke a little bit about it a second ago as I related to Omnicell, where across floors and across health systems, Omnicell solutions are essentially purchased and implemented across a health system. On top of that, as they continue to throw more and more either hardware where it's their IV solution, so they have an IV automation solution that they've essentially assembled called IVX. That is one that is an add-on to a platform solution. On top of that, they are starting to really focus on harnessing all this data in which they have across drug management and trying to turn that into insights for health systems so that they can understand what drugs are being used by whom, when, how inventory is being held, how long, and basically trying to think much more futuristically about the future of an autonomous pharmacy. Intellectual property, that is specific to each company. So in this case, when you think of a company that has over 50% market share in their segment of medication management, there's a lot that goes in there. And intellectual property isn't just the brand per se, but it goes deeper than that. And it can be the supply chain that they've built out. And it can also be some of the technology that they've built out in which they have several patents on. Low-cost producer. So this isn't necessarily a low-cost producer. Just for purposes of this initial one, low-cost producer would be something like a Walmart, right? Which through time and build out, they've created scale and efficiencies. And that's with that scale comes the ability to be the low-cost producer, assuming that's your business objective. Management. So again, Randall Libs, we're trying to get him and the team there on a day that we're going to have, and we'll share more about that in the future. But again, this team has executed wonderfully over the last, honestly, 20 years in terms of Randall Libs. As CEO, this company is right at $1 billion in revenue, and very, very important as it relates to their importance to a health system. Again, recently we've been on calls with the company along with health system professionals, mostly on the technology and pharmacy side, that have said this is priority number kind of 1, 2, or 3 as it relates to their budget. And that's a really important thing to understand when you're thinking about times where everyone's cautious about each dollar that they're spending on products and solutions. So really important for them. Updates. So on this page, we'll always update this page for each company that we're talking about. But essentially what you'll find on the left always is a descriptor and kind of describing why. We'll also articulate some facts that make it that interest us. We'll redefine and just give any sort of commentary around the moat, and it'll change, let's say, year to year. It doesn't really change month to month. But in cases that it does, we'll obviously update that information and share it with you in the video and also on the pages. Again, updates. This is where you'll find the real updates of anything that is interesting. There were 2 with Omnicell. They launched a new solution, or even just rebranded and replatformed a new solution. It's a software as a service solution for basically patient engagement. So think of all the retail pharmacies, retail being the Walgreens of the world. They have around 30,000 to 40,000 customers in which are using their patient engagement platform. So if you think of yourself or myself, in which you are user of medications, you have the management process of that. So that could be you're taking something weekly and getting refills monthly, whatever the management cycle it is for yourself or for in general for the population. Omnicell has a solution, not only the hardware that's in the back end in terms of picking and packing, but also the software that goes along with it. So the launch of that and replatform of that has been seen with a lot of success. And we highlight the Walgreens update as well, in which they kind of doing our due diligence. We found out that they started a pilot with Omnicell's patient engagement program roughly 4 years ago. And today they've essentially launched it pharmacy-wide or chain-wide. And now they have roughly 4 million members who have enrolled in this program alongside Omnicell, right? So this is a really, really important update and news that we think is definitely worth sharing. And it also just further elaborates or entrenches Omnicell into the full solution of pharmacy, not only in acute settings like a hospital, but beyond that, which is in the retail landscape. One quote that I'm highlighting, which is from the Walgreens Senior Director of Pharmacy and Retail Operations, and I'll just read it out loud. Ultimately, what Walgreens was able to do, which is pretty remarkable, is improve patient adherence and make it easier for patients to take their medications when their medications are synchronized. That sentence alone, again, just the understanding of how remarkable, let's say, Omnicell's solution was to their chain. And I think, again, a quote is one thing, but then rolling it out chain wide with 4 million members, I think is really what we're looking for. Not necessarily the talk, but actually the action. And this whole quote, and again, you'll have this piece, you can read the whole quote. I think it's really, really powerful, and one of the reasons we have a strong conviction in Omnicell. Now, to end it, again, each company will have 2 to 3 sections. We want to highlight as much as we want to highlight, but as short as we want to highlight in terms of timing, because the reality is month to month, things don't change. But Omnicell, essentially what they have is, if you think at the very, very bottom, they have a data platform, which they're building out and continue to build out as they connect more and more devices and continue to grow and scale across their industry. All of this data that they're collecting comes from a lot of their automated products and also their hardware products, right? These are the ones that are going across health systems, whether it's medication adherence, like we just talked about, whether it's their point of care solutions, where you have workstations and their XT series, which is where they store medications and other products inside systems that have biometrics and all types of information that will, once connected, can provide a meaningful amount of information. So again, if you think the future of Internet of Things, right? We hear IoT all the time. For us, it's more about like a specific use case, and this is a very, very tangible use case of a device that was once not very connected and didn't kick off that much data, to then reconnect it, or not reconnect it, but connect it to the internet, and ingest a lot of that information, that data, and then essentially analyze that data and see where you can provide insights to a health system. So I think that's very, very powerful. They're getting significant uptake there. They actually have a conference in about 3 weeks that we'll participate in. So that'll be interesting to learn more about the product set that they're building out. Their last one is the Central Pharmacy, which is the XR2 series, which they're essentially one of the only ones in this space providing a fully automated pick and pack at the bottom of essentially a hospital, right? So 33,000 SKUs could essentially get dumped into the system, and it can fully automate it. If you want to learn more, obviously just go on YouTube and you can actually type in XR2 Omnicell, and you can actually see this thing in action. It's remarkable. And that was launched around 2 years ago. So we've been well-versed in what's going on there. On the intelligence side, again, it's really about analytics. So inventory management, med usage analytics, diversion management, compliance management, and population health. So you can just understand how when you own this layer of medication management on the hardware side, and you turn that into more software and services, one, it comes with more margin. So we're extremely happy about that. We think no one's really paying attention to this company. And that's great. But the reality is this is a powerful engine that is, in our opinion, in the early stages of truly digitizing their solution, and they're already in half of the largest health systems. On top of that, and I didn't share this, is they're of those roughly like 160 systems that they're in across the US, the contracts that they've signed with these systems are sole sourced and 10 years long, right? So 10 years sole source. We've been tracking kind of federal spending on medication management, and essentially all this is public information that you just have to dig through. And we've seen a vast amount of sole source deals for Omnicell solutions from the federal government. So really, really interesting. And then they're adding a layer of services on top of this, where you actually have individual people stationed actually in different locations, which can help oversee and manage systems from afar using analytics and data. So it's a full cohesive system to, again, drive outcomes for the system from the cost side, and then for the people like ourselves. Second one, Nutanix. So this continues to be one of our favorite stories. It was one of the darlings, let's say, I don't know, 4 years ago when they first went public. And they made several transitions, one on the business model, their go-to-market, and a bunch of different things, which actually created the opportunity for ourselves. And we always say that, like, very rarely, if things are perfect for an investment, very rarely is there that opportunity to invest for the long term. And Nutanix is one of those stories where we think they have many of the pieces for very, very successful investment. Nutanix, again, I defined it a little bit earlier ago, and essentially what the area they play in is again the data center, right? The data center, whether it's in your own facility where you're managing and storing your data internally, managing the hardware, managing the software, or you're managing it in the public cloud, AWS, Amazon, Google Cloud. There's Microsoft Azure, there's IBM, there's Oracle Cloud as well, and there's various other private cloud vendors that many companies use, and IT staffs. So Nutanix, some of the information that we got this month, which was really, really great to hear, was Gartner has Nutanix as number one in their industry report. So the number one vendor in terms of market share. So Nutanix has 52% of the market. That's up from 48% in 2019. VMware, which is kind of the bellwether in the in their specific category, HCI, essentially lost share, right? It specifically lost share to Nutanix. Nutanix is only a software company today, and what that means is they are operating much more profitable. When I say profitable, I mean margin, gross margin on the software side. Over the next 2 to 3 years, they're going through this transitional story as it relates to their business model. So for a long time, Nutanix was a hardware and software vendor, right? They sold their hardware product with their software attached to it. They decided to sell only their software and stop selling hardware. They made revenue on that hardware. It was actually roughly around 50% of their revenue at one point. And therefore, by giving that away, essentially no longer providing revenue to their income statement, that was seen as somewhat of a red flag, because if you're not following the story, you're just seeing a decline in revenue. But the reality is that lifted their gross margin, their revenue minus the cost that the physical whatever product they're offering is sold for, went from around 60% to 80%. So they're sitting around 80% gross margin today. And that was shift number one. Shift number two was how they sell this solution. So they used to sell it term-based licenses, right? You would sell kind of a product. Think of Microsoft, how we used to buy it, right? We used to buy the CD, and then they would have to try to sell us 3-5 years down the road to buy the next Microsoft solution. And the reality is that's a very, very expensive sell, right? Because every renewal cycle is essentially a new sale. And for us, and for Nutanix specifically, is they switch from that term-based selling to subscription selling. And these subscriptions renew. And the beauty of what's happening here, and I'll show it on a couple pages from now, is roughly 90% of their sales today are either new sales or upsells. So new sales is the most expensive sale you can get because you're trying to get a new customer in, as opposed to somebody lapping their 3-year contract and saying, okay, I'll renew. And that's a much cheaper sale. And for the most part, they've mentioned that this sale comes with essentially 90% less expenses attached to it. So over the next kind of 1, 2, 3 years, we're likely going to see an acceleration both in their bookings volume as they continue to offer a solution for a more complex environment of hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. But on top of that, something in which the economic model starts to make a lot of sense. And we think that's going to be the inflection point. And usually it'll be before the actual inflection point where investors may be rewarded. We also saw an investment from Bain Capital. And again, we're not necessarily have an opinion, let's say, on Bain. It's more that $750 million investment with it's essentially a convertible note, right? So the 750 million will convert to equity only if the share price is above $25 a share. So in some capacity, it puts some sort of base floor, let's say, because they also took 2 board seats at Nutanix. So they're somewhat in control of the floor here. The business itself still has to operate at a really, really high level, right? That's why ultimately we're invested in this business. And we think they have multiple different economic moats attached to it. The switching cost, again, they're at the very, very heart of what technology companies do. IT staffs operate on a day-to-day basis. And because of that, at a very high level, it's very difficult to switch. I mean, if you go talk to VMware users or Nutanix users or Red Hat users, any IT staff, they don't want to switch very often. Intellectual property. So obviously they have their own, it's called a hypervisor. And they've built their own company from the ground up in terms of hyperconverged infrastructure. They really pioneered this space. So there's a lot of intellectual property that they've built over the years, not only brand in terms of people obviously appreciating their innovation. And then lastly, to highlight further is, again, people like their product. Their net promoter score has averaged over 90 over the last 6 years or so. And they have a retention rate of roughly 95, 96%. And that's a customer retention rate. So all this combined essentially puts Nutanix in a really, really powerful place on the product standpoint. They're adapting their business model, which we think will inflect over the next several years, which will be very rewarding as we follow that story. Here's some quotes regarding Nutanix. So there are quotes up from customers. Home Depot and CarMax and Societe Generale is also a customer. And then this just highlights that less than 10% of their billings coming from renewals, and the future of that will continue to increase. So all the customers that they've signed today that are on subscriptions and their 3-year terms, let's say, in a roughly 2-3 years from now, they'll start to see those renewals kick in, and essentially those will come at a much lower cost of capital or cost of acquisition, let's say, for the next dollar. So we think there's a lot of interesting stuff here for Nutanix down the road. So to highlight, to put it all together, we are very, very constructive on these two companies, Nutanix, Omnicell. What you'll see again in the future are two companies for what are they up to. And we have more stuff in store over the next coming weeks and months that are related to this in terms of themes. But either way, I hope everyone stays safe. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and hope to see you guys or speak with you guys soon. All right.